Oh boy, today we have another update for Star Wars The Acolyte. If you watched my previous video on the subject, I speculated that it's probably going to get a season 2 after the first season airs, which is rumoured to be in summer of 2024. I mentioned how Lucasfilm is putting so much emphasis on the success of this show. They're really going to push it in terms of marketing, and they do expect it to do well. Whether it does or not is yet to be seen. But even if this project doesn't do well in terms of numbers, it has been rumoured from sources close to production that the first season's ending is pretty inconclusive. And today, not only do we have confirmation that it is getting a season 2, but we're now told it's multiple seasons. Several just like the structure for Mando. And this information comes to us in a rather surprising and unusual way. I want you guys to think back to March. Karen McCarthy, an initial producer on the show, was suing Lucasfilm for egregiously axing her, even though the studio was still going to use her ideas. It was made public on the same day we found out Patty Jenkins' Rogue Squadron was officially scrapped, and Karen hits Lucasfilm with a contract breach lawsuit. A note in the aforementioned suit said, quote, "The story arc of the show, as well as the company's business plans, called for the Acolyte to run for multiple seasons." So there it is in black and white. And this little tidbit has been making the rounds, so what does this mean in terms of implications on the story of the show itself? Well, I started thinking about this, and it dawned on me that the start of the show, season 1, is going to take place quite close to the end of the High Republic era. And if this is the case, then it would be logical to assume Leslye Headland, especially in the later seasons, let's say 3 and 4, is going to get as close as she can to the time period of the Phantom Menace, maybe even overlapping with it. A lot of us have theorized and fantasized about elements of the Darth Plagueis novel becoming canon. Leslye claims to be a big fan of the expanded universe. She herself is a big fan of the Phantom Menace and the setup for the film, but they could go their own canon way with it. So even if they do bring in characters like Plagueis, Darth Tenebrous, maybe near the end of the show, if it's going to be multiple seasons, a young Palpatine, they might rewrite that backstory, which could be risky, because many Star Wars fans consider that aspect of Star Wars Legends continuity to be some of the best. But there are aspects of the Phantom Menace, the political setup to do with Hugo Damask, that I always wish Disney Star Wars would address. For example, during this balcony scene in the Phantom Menace, did you know that Darth Plagueis is literally in the apartment just off screen? I mean, they didn't film it, but in the book, they contextualized this meeting. Plagueis uses his droid 11-4D to listen to their conversation, and he's surprised they're not meeting at their usual rendezvous point, the Works. Still on Coruscant. In the way the Plagueis novel gave us some additional Sith context, I think the Acolyte can do the same, but in canon. As I say, if it's going to be multiple seasons, if there's time, and if it goes into seasons 3 and 4, then they can start to tie into the prequel trilogy, which I think would be a dream come true. And keep in mind guys, 2024 when the show drops, marks the 25th anniversary of episode 1. There's probably going to eventually be some deliberate overlap, and executives who know about the filming of the show have only good things to say. I mean, they kind of have to. I just really hope they don't cock it up. We need a good quality show focused on the Sith. And I know there are always going to be comments about this, and I've addressed this in previous videos. The creatives have said some unsavory things about George Lucas, about the process of creating Star Wars. But I'm hoping we can overlook all of that, to the point where the show is so good that we don't even need to care what the showrunner said, IRL, in interviews that don't have anything to do with the story. But to be completely frank, apart from the Mandoverse stuff, all of my hope in terms of future Star Wars content relies on Andor Season 2, and this one, The Acolyte. I would say they're the two shows really keeping my hope alive for upcoming Star Wars content. I think it'll be really bad for the brand if The Acolyte does turn out to be, well, a terrible series. Especially with prequel stuff, young Yoda, how they're going to do the High Republic in live action, if there's consistency, if they're going to do overlaps with episode 1. I can see why there's a lot of reason to be worried and kind of apprehensive. But you know, the Sith may not be the only threat in the show, the only bad guys, so to speak. But even then, good is a point of view. We might see an infamous group from the pages of the High Republic adapted for the Acolyte. The Nihil. Fueled by their motivation to pillage and steal for wealth, they were a pirate-like people who existed and operated beyond the reaches of the Republic. Without admiration for mercy or forgiveness, the Nihil's ruthless tendencies to act without remorse in their killing and stealing gained them the reputation that struck fear in their opponents. They were united by their greedy and callous natures, as well as their disdain for the Republic. They viewed the Republic as a force that encroached upon their own territory and interests, and this led to a major conflict between the two factions. They were responsible for the loss of Starlight's beacon. The series finished filming by June of 2023, earlier this summer, and right now it's currently unknown whether the Acolyte will take an episodic approach or serve as one story broken up into chapters, in the same way other shows have been structured. The latter certainly appears to be more likely, due to its murder mystery focus, with the journey of one main protagonist, Amandla Stenberg's character. That doesn't mean we're not going to get flashbacks or fragments of the past. In fact, those have been rumoured to be central to Season 1. We've heard about Sith holocrons, showing us dark side users from the past, such as Nihil, Bane, Revan, and more from the Old Republic. And this really excites me, because Star Wars Legends continuity did so much back in the day to expand our understanding of lore surrounding the Sith, whereas canon, aside from Vader and Sidious, has given us very little. The Acolyte is an opportunity to kick those canon doors wide open, maybe draw from the expanded universe. So moving on to our next piece of Star Wars news, from the Acolyte to Star Wars Celebration 2025. The next celebration is in Japan, and we do have our first piece of news for it. Lucasfilm's VP of Franchise Assets and Publicity posted on social media on Monday that he had just returned from Japan as part of the company's advance party to start planning Celebration in 2025. There are still another 18 months to go, but it is fun to look to the future and start thinking about what the convention will bring. I predict the biggest focus by then is going to be The Mandalorian Season 4, and the upcoming May 2026 film, the one about Rey. And current word on the convention floor is that the 2025 one in Japan is going to focus heavily on the films. This event is going to be the perfect setting for a teaser trailer for the Rey movie. It's also the perfect spot to have a panel celebrating 10 years of The Force Awakens and 20 years of Revenge of the Sith. And so finally, my dear friends, a very interesting tidbit concerning George Lucas. James Mangold, who's got an upcoming Star Wars movie about the Dawn of the Jedi, who was also the director on Indiana Jones 5, Dial of Destiny, has revealed that George had more influence on Indy 5 than anything else that Lucasfilm has put out under Disney. Mangold had mentioned in the past that Lucas and Spielberg had some input on Dial of Destiny, but we didn't know to what extent. Well, here is what Mangold now says in response to a fan on the Bird app. On the subject of George, one must acknowledge that he created the entirely original and unique concept of the character of Indiana Jones from nothing. Indy is a profound extension of George's own personality, part maverick, part theoretician, part adventurer, part idealist, part wise-ass, part academic, and 100% unstoppable. Secondly, George also created the unique tone, combining classic Golden Age adventure films he loved with modern filmmaking tech and humour. In terms of DoD, Dial of Destiny, George read our early scripts and offered notes and guidance, as well as watching the cut as it progressed. He's a brilliant man, and I'm grateful that this film gave me the chance to collaborate with so many of my heroes. Now we know George has been involved as a creative consultant on The Force Awakens, he advises Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, he visits the Mandalorian set, he gave some feedback to Rogue One and Andor, but he also collaborated on the Dial of Destiny in quite a significant way. I just find that very interesting. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. May the Force be with you, always.